North-South Connection Podcast Network fans, welcome into the Wrestling War Zone, a Monday Night Wars podcast retrospective series. I am JT, and joining me as ever is my partner on the show, Mr. Chad. Chad, how are you?
Doing good. How's it going?
Not too bad. So
Boy.
I hear plenty of that tonight for sure.
Yeah.
I am good. I'm excited to be here. Got my NWO gear on because tonight on the show we are all NWO. Straight from Warwick, Rhode Island. This shirt. The NWO got along better than members of AEW, it seems. But anyway, in this program right here, we are simulcast on both video and audio. We're video on our YouTube channel over North-South Connection. You can also find us on any podcast platform on North-South Connection, and you can hear the audio version of this. And a lot of our content is simulcast, but also there's exclusives. So if you subscribe to both, you won't miss a thing. Follow us on social media. You'll get alerted every day as well because we have content pretty much dropping it daily. Chad, me and you are here every other Monday, going through the history of the Monday Night Wars. We started in September of 1995, my friend, and here we are at the tail end of January 1997. We cover every week of television. We cover all the pay-per-views, all the clashes, and all the other big extravaganzas that occur throughout this time period. And tonight we are on our January 1997 WCW pay-per-view, and that is NWO Souled Out.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's an interesting show to discuss, of course. It was honestly one when I think about this time frame, I hadn't watched very much at all. Like start to finish, it is one that you just never, if you're wanting to fall asleep to something, it never seems to kind of make its way in the rotation compared to a bunch of other stuff. I've actually been on a big 1999 WCW pay-per-views, Can't Go Into Sleep, which works pretty well. But we'll get there in like 6 years. But for now, I think this is a very interesting show to talk about. It's one I think that's cool to talk about in retrospect because obviously it carries a pretty hefty reputation for all its shortcomings. But as we'll discuss, like I definitely had some thoughts while watching that I disagreed with some of the kind of consensus on the show. So we'll hatch it all out.
As Tim Cable could tell you, I always associate this show with being sick. I had a legendary stomach bug one year, and this was the show I put on as I recovered. So I associate this with like not going to sleep, but like a being sick watch is what I associate this with.
This isn't the Rumble 2014, or is this?
No, this was like before that. Just that one. I had a real bad one. I'm trying to think back in my memory bank, but I'm pretty confident I watched this live at my younger cousin's house. They were into wrestling, but we weren't like diehard. But like I think we used to go over there a lot on Saturday nights, and I think we were there, and they let us order it. Like I vaguely recollect watching this in their house. So I don't know if we watched it live or if they taped it. And like I went over that week and we watched the tape, maybe like it was something like that where I saw it pretty quickly around when it was airing. It's deep in my memory somewhere. I don't have like a crisp memory of it.
Yeah, this is one for me that I think I didn't watch in full until like I downloaded a big torrent pack of all the pay-per-views from in like 2007, 2000, circa that time frame. So well after the fact, where it was like all WCW pay-per-views. I just went to town.
And I think it's one of those things where we're going to talk about it, like the difference of in the moment versus a rewatch on this type of show, right? So we'll get into that. Do we have any news or notes we want to get into before we dive into the show?
There's a lot to talk about. I think most of the news and notes will save. Well, we'll sprinkle in the actual show review comments from Keller and then Meltzer star ratings while they happen. But I thought, especially on the Torch side, both the Torch columnist comments as well as some of the reader comments were interesting in retrospect. So we'll get to that as we wrap up.
Okay. So this was January 25th. 1997. It was a Saturday night. This is the week after the Super Bowl, or was it the night before? This is the night before the Super Bowl, right? Okay.
Yep.
So that's a pretty big weekend right there. I mean, you got Packers, Patriots the next day. I remember that we had a big party for that Super Bowl. I do remember my parents usually had an annual Super Bowl party, but that one felt a little bigger with the Pats being local, and it was a pretty big deal in Rhode Island with them making the Super Bowl. So, big weekend if you're a sports / wrestling fan here in '97.
Yeah, it's like I'd have to see if the Rumble had ever done that up to this point. I don't
Had
think
run
so.
on Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah, because that's become like a pretty synonymous thing with a big UFC
right
pay-per-view before the Super Bowl. Like I know Brock Lesnar's UFC debut versus Frank Mir was the night before the Super Bowl. Remember that?
I wonder if WWE will do it. Try it with them running Saturday nights now. Like, would they ever run a Rumble on a Saturday night with the Super Bowl Sunday? I mean, it's tough because of the travel. They book these as destination events now, so like probably less likely, but
maybe. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of crossover though. People going to Royal Rumble versus
no. I mean, Super Bowl is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Many average people aren't going to the Super Bowl.
No.
So it'll be interesting if they ever take a shot at it. I think they prefer to own the weekend usually, but
yeah. That would probably be more of a factor, just like they would get very lost and muddled in the news cycle of everything.
Right.
They might not be trending on Twitter or whatever if something happens that Saturday night. So
yeah, and they have nothing against them that other weekend because the Pro Bowl is essentially dead. So like that off weekend in between is like for them to snuggle into. Mm-hmm. The only problem is going to be the Super Bowl if it continues to push deeper into February. That's actually, was it last year? Was it the same weekend as the conference? Yeah, it was, right? Yeah. So the Super Bowl moving, they no longer have that weekend to themselves. So
yeah. This current year, I mean, it was Saturday was the Rumble in San Antonio. Sunday was the two conference champions.
Right. Oh yeah, of course, we watched them together. So yes.
Yep. How can you forget that memorable NFC Championship game?
Great game.
At Dave and Buster's.
Where I got yelled at for going to play a game, despite the game being trash.
Here we go.
Anyway, tough guys. All right, what do we got going on? Bring us in.
Cedar Rapids. Yeah, we're at Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We cut to a cold open, literally a cold open, as we see the downtown of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and we get some dump trucks. And the police
garbage trucks,
garbage trucks,
which is
not dump trucks, garbage
better or worse,
garbage trucks. You could tell it was freezing cold as you can see their air as they breathe. So I mean, I think this is our first big talking point. Is this open? And I know like that in the Nash 1997 timeline, he talks about that. And this is also one of those things that just is getting so maligned. Historically, the show, I mean, this isn't good, right? Like, I didn't think this was good. I thought this was pretty lame. But it's not very long either. I think that's one thing that this was kind of my first alarmed take was, I mean, this is only 2 or 3 minutes. Like I'd have remembered this as a much more stretched out, egregious opening.
Yeah.
So as it was, like, it wasn't cool. It was a weird concept. Like, yeah, if they'd have just came up in the limos like they had, I mean, if they wanted to do something different, and I don't know logistics, because I mean, Cedar Rapids, this didn't give exactly the greatest look for Cedar Rapids overall in the metropolitan area. But I think a cool thing they could have done, which was risky but would have been fun, was you could have had like the Outsiders and Hogan in like a helicopter or something, and like landed on the that would have been different from the limo. And then you could have the limo with the B team that meets up with them. But that I was just trying to think of something different that also would have been cool for an arrival. I think that was there. I mean, a garbage truck wasn't it. So.
It's like they just thought of the idea that afternoon and were like, what can we get from Public Works that could work for us?
Yes.
I like it in a feeling that it feels like rogue and different, right? So again, like this whole show to me, you have to compartmentalize. I can never do it. compartmentalize the like giving them credit and praise for doing different things, trying unique concepts, making this stand out from a standard pay-per-view versus like how it holds up as rewatchability and did that stuff work, right? So like I want to give them praise throughout this for okay, they're trying to make this seem different. They're trying to make it seem rogue and a little bit badass and everything else. So you got these guys, they're riding through the snowy streets, like it's a cool look. Um, I actually think it did feel a little bit long. That was my only problem with it. I think it should have been like a 10-second clip. Like, here's how the NWO entered earlier, driving through the snow. And then maybe we start with them walking the building because I like them hyping the troops up as they come in. Like, it gives you like a fun party vibe that they're all arriving at their party. Yep. If we don't want to go to the air and the snow with the helicopter, maybe we could have done like Jeeps, like Army, like kind of like DX would do later. That could have been cool, like open top Jeeps or something where you're still out in the cold in the snow, but you're like, it looks a little bit more badass than, riding in the back of a garbage truck. So like, I get it. I get what they were trying to do, but again, it feels to me like it's something they came up with at the last second and weren't sure what to do. So they just went ahead and said, oh, we'll just grab some garbage trucks for Public Works and we'll ride those in. Or something. Maybe it was like a private company that they hired or something.
I mean, we should mention it's all in black and white and kind of that scratched video. I mean, I'm looking now at 2 minutes and 30 seconds is when Hogan and them enter the actual building.
Right.
So it's to me, it's not like it's this insanely long, drawn out process, but I get it. Before we get going, we will be mentioning the Nash 1997 timeline, which I watched with some of our stuff. I want to give a shout out to Jonathan Black, who's been leaving a lot of great comments on our YouTube and had a lot of good thoughts from the Nash timeline for us to talk about on this show that he left on the Clash of the Champions video. So thank you very much for that. But yeah, so then they're in the building, they're hyping everybody up, hooping and hollering. And then we get the actual opening, which says in color, and they go to color, and we get kind of, the following announcement is paid for by the New World Order type opening.
Yeah.
This, and we'll have to think, and we'll have to keep track, but to me, I think this may be the best pay-per-view opening that WCW does in this run.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about them having kind of weak opens with the kind of hacked up like videos to just kind of promote the show ahead without like any kind of drama or storytelling like WWF excels at, especially even during this time period when the product is down. They still were fantastic in the opening videos. So I don't think I would debate that. I would say it's up there for sure with their best stuff. Let me ask you this. In your memory, in your mind, was this whole pay-per-view black and white?
Well, I did watch it later, like I said. So no, I didn't remember that. I do remember like the color scheme, like obviously the mat had the NWO in the black. So, but yeah, I mean, so this opening has the iconic like "We're in Control," which Eric is forever. He's essentially like a dictator.
Yes,
the whole thing. It certainly feels like the chapter 1 to Mr. McMahon's Utopia that we see at Over the Edge 98. I just thought it was very engaging, very different.
I like the whole overall presentation. Like I like him and DiBiase just kind of hanging out while they're calling the show. Like it's they tried to give it much more of a laid back feel to everything and not as polished, even though it is polished. But in my memory, the whole thing was black and white. Even when I watch it today, I'm still caught off guard sometimes when they go to color.
When it goes to color.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was always the whole thing was black and white, but I'm glad it wasn't.
Yeah. So we go to the arena and like you said, I mean, this has a different aesthetic look from really any other pay-per-view before or since. Like this is a very one-off looking pay-per-view. There's even different type of pyro that they set off. They have like 3 big screens and it's in like kind of like a pyramid with steps coming down the entranceway. They have a bunch of smaller TVs with graphics. There's a band. They have motorcycles lined up the ramp, and then, like you said, Eric and DiBiase, who are announcers for the evening, they're just kind of like hanging out. Like they're not. They don't have an announce table. They're sort of, Eric's like sitting on top of like a toolbox or something. Mm-hmm. It's a very different approach to a pay-per-view, and this is where I think this pay-per-view excels from a concept standpoint, because I think this looks really cool. I thought this looked awesome today, and I think it's so conditioned. Like we just saw all in, and that, of course, looked awesome from a crowd scope size, right. And they did have a smaller stage setup. But when you do those wide frame shots, like it still looks like a lot of your WrestleManias, your major shows, whatever. Everything looks the same, whereas this looked very different. It looked cool and interesting, and I thought this was awesome. I actually thought this was a home run. Like, I would love to see more like this, and I thought it was very ballsy them to do this, because even, I mean, I don't think there's any pay-per-view, and we'll get to it. Like, this was a failure from a buy rate standpoint, right. So it makes sense why they didn't try this again.
Saturday night before the Super Bowl, we talked about it. Right? I mean, that probably didn't help, right?
It's rough, but I don't think any concept-wise, I don't think there's been a pay-per-view in wrestling done since this, except for maybe the first All In, and just that was the novelty. But I don't think there's been as ballsy like a pay-per-view in wrestling, like from a concept, aesthetic, etc. Because even when I mean, I don't know, could you think of anything? Like, I was trying to wrap my head. Because even like the ECW pay-per-views themselves were, right. That was something, but they looked a lot the same as the shows. Like, they didn't do anything radically different.
WWF sets were cool in like the 2000s. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anything that really just jumps out. I mean, I think Wembley for SummerSlam '92 maybe is one of them. But no, this is a very unique and very, very different. Like, it's a cool concept. I think you're right. I think they knocked it out of the park. I'm curious if, like, well, I guess we know the answer because they don't do it. But like you said, it's ballsy for them to try it now. And I agree to an extent. But on the other side, they're not like dominating and owning this war in as a huge financial success just yet, right? That's like a year later. And they do start to play it more safe, I think, as this goes. I think right now, Bischoff is still kind of in the house money vibe, right? They're kind of winning consistently. NWO's hot. We can kind of throw some shit at the wall. I think within the next 6 months or so, they start to settle into more of a risk averse. Like, we don't want to fuck with the NWO. It's working. We don't want to take as many chances. They're working. Right now, they still feel like they're on the tail end of that risk averse, or not as being as risk averse and being more open to trying different things than they had been in the past. So, you know, I think the timing's right. I'm curious as to when we start to feel less different. I think it's probably coming sometime in '97. But right now, like, they still do a lot of cool concepts and different stuff for the NWO. They're trying to be cutting edge.
Yeah, I just think it took a lot to kind of for them to do this radical. It just, this looks like any other pay-per-view again, just now or since. So getting all of that out of the way, I think we're ready for our first match.
Well, no, for one thing I do want to mention. So Bischoff, when he's doing the introductions, he mentions Hogan and the Outsiders, and they kind of come up on the 3 screens behind him.
Yeah.
And they're riffing. It felt a little bit like a Disney attraction or something, like the Muppets. Right? Like, they're like the 3 of them are up. Yeah, it felt like the 3 of them were up on the screen, and it felt a little pre-recorded. Or like if you go on like the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, right? They have the skit on the screen. Like, it felt a little bit like that. So I thought that was kind of hokey with the 3 of them up there, like talking to everybody. I would have preferred just like Bischoff just shit talking a little bit than that. I mean, minor quibble, but something that stood out to me.
Okay. Loser. We'll get to that. That was an aesthetic choice too. That played more of a role in the second half for some reason. Our opening match is Masa, my hero, Chono versus Chris Jericho. Nick Patrick comes out. He referees all the matches.
Every match.
We'll bury the lead there, but he comes out for this one. You know, decent looking match on paper, I thought. When they show the Harleys right there next to the ring, Eric, and there's one of the Miss NWO contestants on top of the Harley. Eric says she's a beauty, and Ted's like, "That's a nice bike too," and he was like, "That's what I meant." So already crapping on that. You know, some basic action to start. I thought this match was an interesting choice for opener, and I don't know if it was just the whole aesthetic and the way the show kind of works out, or these two may not necessarily mesh that well together. But it felt like it took a little bit for them to get into gear. We did have the thing right like 2 minutes in where the WCW wrestlers come out.
Yes.
And what a crew here. So we have Sister Sherry, Harlem Heat, Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, the Faces of Fear, Arn Anderson, Randy Anderson, and Deborah Mongo, and then Brian Knobs. And when Knobs comes out, we get a pretty hefty burial of Jerry Sags.
Yes.
On commentary from Eric. So I think they may have been waiting for that to really kick the match into high gear, but it's a little bit of a herky jerky start. Also, Eric right away gives a nice shots fired to WWF by saying that they have a packed house here in Cedar Rapids. They didn't have to give away tickets to our pay-per-view at a 7-Eleven. So
that was good.
A nice one there. Jericho at one point kind of hurts his leg, and it felt like that might be the focal point, but they don't really. Chono doesn't necessarily capitalize on it very much, which I thought was a little odd. Some more back and forth, and then we kind of get to our finishing stretch already. Oh, I did mention, because I do think they show that this is another aesthetic thing, but they had that weird camera, which is on the stick. It was almost like a boom mic, is what it looked like. But the little like camcorder, like where he can put it right in ringside, and it's a real like bird's eye view. From the viewer standpoint, I'd say the closest comparison is the refer eye that you get in Halloween Havoc. I like that. What do you think of that? I thought that was cool, and something they actually probably could utilize today with updated technology, and it might.
You got a little handy camera drone.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not surprised they haven't used drones yet for like filming like that. Yeah, I mean, I think everything about this on this show is great from an aesthetic point of view. Like, I think the choices they make to make it be different. I love it. It's early version of like XFL type shit, right? Where like they're like, fuck it, we're different. We're going to be different. We're going to try different stuff and be cutting edge. So they try and do stuff like that with this unique camera angle that makes it stick out and be different. And the only negative to it is it makes you think, well, why can't we always do these things? Like it does make you wonder, right?
Right. So our ending stretch, Chono goes outside. He sets up a table. Ted says no sushi yet. Jericho goes up top, hits a missile drop kick, and then hits a lion salt for 2. Then Jericho goes to the top again. Chono hits him with the mafia kick, and he takes a bump through the table, which I thought again from a was different. Like we had seen table bumps and openers before, like Public Enemy, but that's kind of like your generic like garbage style stuff. Like this felt pretty shocking, I guess, to get a table bump in the opener of this match. And then Chono hits another mafia kick to pick up the win. So, I mean, Jericho had been gaining some momentum. So having him lose to Chono, I didn't think it was awful. I don't know if there was somebody else you might could have put in this role that would have been better, but I didn't have a huge problem with Chono picking up the victory here. Overall, as the match itself, again, I thought it was fine, but I thought they didn't necessarily mesh very well, and I don't know if that's just the guys or the environment. So I only went 2.5.
So one of the other cool choices they do is the NWO disembodied voice. does all the intros and kind of shits on the WCW guys, which I found funny. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, no entrance music for any of the WCW guys.
No entrance music. It makes it feel like real enemy territory. They're kind of coming out to silence. You get this, disembodied voice mocking them as they come to the ring.
Right.
So I like it. Right. It's a little lowbrow, but in a funny way. Chono gets the B team theme, which is great, of course. Bischoff talks about how he first met Jericho. So a little bit through this, you still get Bischoff where he's like being very NWO slanted, but doing his like giving credit to where credit's due kind of stuff.
Right.
He does that a lot throughout this. The ring is fully black with the logo. Patrick in the NWO colors reffing looks cool. The joke about the 7-Eleven is good. Bischoff also brags about spending Ted Turner's money. At one point, DiBiase asked what an STF stands for, and Bischoff says, I think it's motor oil, when Chono was going for that. We also get a lot of USA chant. Bischoff mocks that. He does all stupid karate terms when Jericho does an enziguri, back leg, front round kick, or whatever the fuck he calls it. He's always doing that. So it's really Chono trying to find a way to the STF. Bischoff says he's surprised that the crowd is a little bit partisan toward WCW. He's surprised they're not all NWO here. And then the Mafia kick finish, I thought was pretty good. It was definitely slow paced. The Patrick stuff, in there was a little sloppy at times, but it felt like Jericho was scrapping for his life in a fight against the odds. Like that's what they kind of structured this to feel like all throughout the show. I thought his knee selling was good too, and Chono gets the NWO on the board. So I'll go 2 3/4 on this. Like I thought it was a fine opener. I think they're probably banking on something more when you kick the show off with this match. Like you're really probably expecting them to deliver something a little bit better. So I would say they're probably disappointed coming out of it, but it was not like a dud or anything to start the show.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing for this show that we can mention now, because they're not on there, is there's no like cruiserweights really per se on the show. I mean, 80 and 6 are the closest we get to that, but there's no Dean Malenko, no Ultimo Dragon, no Rey Mysterio, no Psychosis, Juventud, etc. So an interesting choice there. Now it is time for our first of many Miss NWO segments. So Eric says we're taking a look at the lovely ladies for Miss NWO. Says they are changing the wrestling world. Eric shows some of the beauties that wanted to be a part of the Miss NWO. There's a montage of different photos and whatnot. Eric lets us know
that's where it peaks.
Yeah, Eric lets us know they had to pay their way to get there. He hands off to Jeff Katz, who's crazy. Like Katz is like 17 or 18 doing this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He got hired in '96 when he was 17. Oh, wow. So he's a kid. Basically, he'd be like you. I mean, like you're around the same age. At that point, yeah. At that point, being on pay-per-view. So
busy singing "Waking Up Alone."
Right. Katz says, "Do you like biker chicks?" Also, I was getting a drink out of the fridge when Katz first came on screen. And when I was in the other room and I heard Katz's voice, I'd never put this together, but he sounded like Steve Riddle to me.
Yes. Yep.
And now I cannot disassociate both of them.
I agree.
I was like, oh my God, it's such a Riddle voice. And then, so basically Katz is interviewing all the Miss NWO contestants.
He gives them all a unique question.
We should say the band is playing in the background too, so it's loud. So Katz says to the first one, "What does the term 'going all the way' mean to you?" Did she say fellatio or fellacia?
It was hard to hear. I mean, honestly, I had a hard time.
It was
following what she meant, but apparently
that was
the further she'll go.
Yes. The next one is asked about Kevin Nash being the big man, and what does that mean? She said,
how would you tame him?
How would you tame him? She would do anything it takes. Katz asks for more detail, and she doesn't offer any.
She gives like a sly smile. Did you hear what he called her though?
No.
A minx. After she gave the sly smile, she's like, "Oh, what a minx."
Oh boy. So this was terrible. We'll talk about this, but
I can't find, me, I'll look for the best in all the wrestler crap, but like this, I couldn't find it in this. Like, I think it's such a waste of time on this fucking
Yeah.
show. I could not get into any of it. Cass isn't funny.
No, I mean the women can't hear them. I don't know. I guess from a concept, it was like let's get ugly women and crap on them. But then there's some aren't. I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
wild. It's just.
But they don't really crap on him. That's the weird thing. Like Bischoff
No.
plays it off like he's into it. So
They don't. I mean, I didn't necessarily know if they were in on the joke until the very end when the winner sits on the toilet, which we talk about. But even then, I still don't know. So
it's antithetical to what they're trying to do. Is like they're trying to be cool and badass, and then you got like these ugly. I mean, they're not all ugly. There's a couple good looking chicks in there, but like there's a lot of ugly, and they're bagging on them. Like, you think they would have had the hottest of the hot like strippers there? Like, that's what the 17-year-olds want to see, right? That's cool. We're trying to be cutting edge and cool. I want to see the Nitro girls. I know they're not there yet, but like something like that, right? Like dancers and strippers out there, with the NWO colors, parading around the ring. Like, give me the ring girls. Don't give me this stupidity.
Yeah, I mean, from a TNA standpoint, like when this show aired, you already had Marlena doing her flash at Shotgun Saturday Night. You had the tease of Sunny sex tape and that being resolved and what happened with that. So, like, learn from that. Like, you have examples from the competition to where they've utilized that and their cutting edge.
Raw magazine had been doing the photo spreads. Like, they'd already done the Sunny bikini shoot. They had already done Marlena like topless in the Raw thing. They'd done a Sable one. Like, so they had already been doing those in Raw magazine. Also, ECW had been doing it too, like in '96, with Kimona and with Beulah and Francine, like doing the cat fights and all that stuff. Like, they're presenting hot girls like in the world of wrestling. So that's one area where WCW has definitely been behind, despite their peak here, has been like the eye candy female stuff. Well, for better or worse, I'm not defending it, but I'm saying in 1997, like that's kind of where wrestling, as they were becoming more cutting edge, was leaning toward. And like WCW, you have Sherry, who, she's gorgeous in her own way, right? But she's not like a young, sexy girl out there in a bikini. You got Medusa, who had just come back. She's not presented that way, right? She's an athlete. So we'll get there eventually with the Nitro girls. And then when Russo comes, of course, they go all in. But for now, like, they don't really have that aspect. The most we have, I guess, is Deborah and Woman. But even they're presented more like traditional, like, beauty pageant, like women, right? Like a Miss Elizabeth was in like the 80s, right? More like that versus like a sexy young woman.
Yeah. It's I mean, I would say the angle they do at Uncensored with Paige and Savage with the Playboy, the NWO, that's kind of the edge that they needed to utilize for this. It's just one of those things. If you're going to devote this much time, which this gets a lot of time, I mean, over the course of the pay-per-view, there's probably 20 minutes devoted to Miss NWO stuff. I feel pretty confident in that. And so if you're devoting this much time, it either needs to be funny or
hot,
the other, and it's neither. It's really bad. This is easily the worst NWO thing since they've started.
Yeah, I mean, one way they could have went with it too is they could have done like have half hot women and then half kind of not so hot, and the half that weren't hot or that they wanted to mock, have them be the Miss WCW, and then the Miss NWO or these hot girls like the strip club girls, and then they kind of who's gonna win, right? Miss WCW or Miss NWO, like something like that would have been like better and more on brand with what they were trying to do.
Yeah, so this was bad. Hugh Morris isn't out next versus Big Bubba. It's supposed to be Conan. They still call it a Mexican death.
Oh my god! All of this has been like a mess, like with this whole feud.
Hugh Morris is dressed like Big Dick Duckley. He's got a tie-dye shirt on. I don't know. At one point on commentary, Eric actually says Jerry Garcia. So it's an interesting new look here. Eric does talk about the Macho Man on Monday on commentary. He says he's not being blackballed. He's just sick and tired of him. WCW nor NWO wants his services, so find another life, Randy, because you don't have one here. Ted says he heard he was living in a box. So this is kind of your, I would say, your basic meat and potatoes match here. A lot of clubbering, a lot of punches. The strikes themselves I thought were fine, but I also thought the match itself was pretty disjointed overall. Bubba gets sent hard into the ring steps, which I thought was funny. And then Patrick says, if you keep it up, I'm sending you out of here, him threatening a DQ. Jimmy Hart puts the boots to Bubba on the outside. Jimmy Hart and Nick Patrick get into it a good bit in this match. And then a chain gets used. So Bubba goes for a charge in the corner, gets smacked with a punch and a chain. Patrick asks if he brought that in. Bubba then uses the chain with Nick Patrick, like blatantly turning around so he doesn't see it. And so a lot of back and forth with the chain stuff. Then Morris is able to hit the no laughing matter. That is when they say, well, that still is impressive that somebody can do that at that size. So giving him his credit.
Yeah, he does that often all through this, like we said. He's gives the credit.
Yeah, Patrick does the count, but it's very slow. Morris gets in Patrick's face. Bubba clubs him from behind. Another slow count. Morris kind of puts the foreign object on his hand and clubs away. Ted says Bubba has done everything by the book, and Morris keeps cheating. Can you believe this? He's outraged. And then they start fighting up the entrance ray. Morris does like a variation of the no laughing matter off of like the third or fourth step.
Yeah.
And then we get our finish, which was a little wild, where Bubba basically rips one of the Miss NWO contestants off her bicycle or off her Harley, gets on the bike, turns it on, cranks it up. Eric says it's against the law to run someone over, but Bubba does it anyway. The crowd kind of reacts to it. And then Nick Patrick counts Hugh Morris out. So Bubba ends up getting the win by count out. Like I said, pretty basic meat and potatoes match. The striking itself looked pretty good. I actually think Morris himself looked more spirited than he has in a lot of stuff we've seen on Nitro. But the match was just disjointed. It was again kind of playing towards the angle of, Nick Patrick's a crooked referee. They had this finish that they wanted to do that I think they thought was cool and unique, but it didn't necessarily execution-wise look that great. I didn't think him running him over. And overall, this didn't really feel like a pay-per-view match at all to me. I think that's the biggest grievance that I have against it, is that this was sort of first hour Nitro, not a pay-per-view caliber match. So I gave it 2.25. I didn't think it was awful when you just look at the match standalone, but not great either.
The inherent problem with this show and doing it when they're doing it is that the NWO ranks aren't built up enough yet to have a full quality card in front presented, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we're losing. You named all the talent not on the show that we would normally have on a pay-per-view. And maybe down the line when the NWO ranks are a little thicker, like it could have been better. But right now you're going to be stuck with these matches because your lower levels are made up of dudes like Big Bubba, like Michael Wall Street, like a Bagwell, whoever. So you're gonna kind of miss out on those. With this would have maybe normally been a Ray versus a Malenko or something like that.
That was a grievance I have for this show overall. That's where I give this show negative. And I try to think how they could have circumvented that. We know like NWO Nitro was only going to be an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think you could take an hour of this show and present it, and it'd be a very good show.
Yeah.
If you were selective. And I was trying to think, like, I wonder, and it would have been ballsy, and you'd have lost some of probably the set and some of the other aesthetic stuff. But I think it would have been cool if you had just presented a WCW pay-per-view and had the NWO takeover.
Right.
I don't know if you could have done like maybe they could have thrown to the opening video package, basically like restart, and they could have really hustled and maybe changed the mat or do something. Because we'll see, like when they take over Nitro later on, it takes 40 minutes or whatever. So if they could do that quickly, where it was still like their vibe, but they took over the pay-per-view itself, I think that could have been really interesting.
Or just if you're going to do this way, just have WCW versus WCW matches and say, look, we want to give them a chance, show what they got. Like they're going to be here anyway. Go for it, and then you just keep interfering at the end or something. Like fuck with them. Oh, we brought them here to mess with them or something like that. There's probably a way they could have done it. Right. Bischoff calling Morris a big ugly son of a gun. Big joking all about WCW not having music. So DiBiase says the dungeon sent Hugh Morris to get revenge for Conan, but to your point, there's like, why was it a mecha? Yeah, none of it made sense. The disembodied voice makes a tortilla joke. Bischoff does mention Savage being on Nitro, but it's brief and they don't say too much. And maybe the worst commentary moment of the night, DiBiase says, tonight is a coup d'etat, meaning coup d'etat, but he says coup d'etat. Coup d'etat. Bubba takes some decent bumps in this. Like, I haven't been super high on Bubba through some of the stuff we talked about, but I thought here he actually worked pretty well. DiBiase wonders what kind of drugs Jimmy's on because he's out there being crazy. He's really just not giving a shit tonight. He's like just saying whatever he wants. Yeah. I hated DiBiase and Bischoff in this match, whining about the rules. It's a death match, so it's a confusing presentation. Like, you're hyping about how it's a death match, and then you're like, well, he's not playing by the rules. Why are they cheating? That drove me nuts. Bischoff mentions the fans camping out in San Francisco for the Super Bowl, tickets going on sale. So he's still trying to work in some WCW stuff in there. The Morris bump on the No Laughing Matter to the ramp was pretty hard. I mean, he took that pretty flush. And then I actually thought he did a good job with the motorcycle bump. That's one that could have looked really stupid. But I thought he bumped off the motorcycle pretty well. He had pretty good. Like, I didn't think it didn't look too staged. I thought it was surprisingly fun. I liked the drama and the hard-hitting offense. The crowd was kind of into it too. To me, the worst part was the commentary. Like, it just was completely counterproductive. I would say the match was a little bit long toward the end, but I did like the motorcycle finish. I thought it was different. So I went 2.5. And to this point, you're feeling like, all right, this is a pretty wild show. Like, we're all over the fucking place. We got these, Jeff Katz with these chicks. We got the guy calling everyone a loser. We got, whatever. Guy got run over by a motorcycle. Like we are all over the place right now on this show.
Another Miss NWO segment. Jeff Katz tells the contestant he's a Capricorn loser. Then he says rim shot. So I don't know. I'm sure that was some inside joke or something, but I didn't know. His question is, what would you do to be in Hogan's movies? She says, whatever it takes.
These poor girls.
The next one is to Bischoff, I'd say, is the best of the looks aesthetic. So Kat says he has $1.50 on him. She said she would walk away with the big bill. It's none of these were. I don't know. I don't think they prep. I mean, obviously they didn't prep them at all.
No, not at all.
But this
maybe they thought they could do one answer, but they are not doing it. No. That woman, Kat, the one that you like, said Kat's called her buoyant. Our next contestant is buoyant.
Yeah. Then they show like some dancers behind those three.
They looked hot. Where were they? Were they hiding behind the screen?
Yep. They also show the NWO website, which was
cutting edge,
very humorous. Very, very humorous for 1997 to look back on. Our next match has that theme more than Michael Wall Street as he comes out versus Jeff Jarrett. Bischoff talking about Jarrett says, somebody get this guy a new outfit. Deborah's shown in the crowd. She's cheering Jarrett on. Ted. I thought Ted was pretty funny, actually, talking about Deborah and Mongo. Basically talking about how much of a cuck Mongo is for Deborah. Yeah. He says Deborah has a lot of hot air. He's asking where the leash for Mongo is. He was pretty vicious.
I mean, I don't know if he was clean yet at this point or if he was still on the smack, but he's pretty like kind of let loose on this show. He's not holding back.
No.
I want to see when he when he leaves the NWO, I know what he does after, but is there a gap where he gets clean in between? Like, is he still on like drugs during the NWO time, or I don't remember when he cleans up, but I think when he comes back as a face, when he's there as a face later with the dudes he manages, I think is when he's clean. But I don't remember if there's a gap in between NWO and then that, or if he goes right to being a face.
Okay.
We'll see. I'm curious.
So some basic action in this match. Deborah looks concerned. Jarrett does take a wild bump over the guardrail. But then, of course, Michael Wall Street, his attack is so boring. It's a sleeper. Jarrett fights out, reverses it. Patrick says he had a chokehold on, so he makes him break. Then Wall Street puts on his chin lock, and this just goes way too long. Even Eric has to admit the crowd's getting a little bit anxious. And then we basically go to our finish where Jarrett misses his punch from the middle rope. Arn Anderson and Randy Anderson are sitting next to each other, showing the crowd just a random duo to be together. I thought Arn Anderson looked kind of lame. Him as this horseman.
Yeah.
Just sort of hanging out with these referees and all these losers from WCW.
Yeah, they probably shouldn't have had him out there.
I mean, it was a rough look for him. Jarrett goes after the leg, locks on the figure four. Mick Patrick pulls Wall Street towards the ropes. Deborah's pleading with Mongo to interfere. The abdominal stretch is utilized by Jarrett first, and Wall Street reverses and uses the ropes for leverage. That puts Mongo has had enough, so he gets on the apron with the Halliburton. He blasts Wall Street with the Halliburton, and then he threatens Nick Patrick with it. So Nick Patrick is kind of forced to make the count. So Jarrett ends up winning here. This as a match was not good. I thought this was easily the worst match, and I didn't think the first two were very good. I thought this was a very poor match. Wall Street sucks.
He's terrible. He's gonna go.
And even the finish itself, like the finish itself on one hand plays into the stuff with Deborah and Jarrett and Mongo. So that's fine. But I think from a meta sense, it brings into question a larger problem with what's going on with this show, that if Mongo is able to threaten Nick Patrick with the Halliburton and he makes the count, then why are these WCW guys for the remainder of this show, with the exception of Randy Anderson, just sitting there the whole show doing nothing, including the most egregious we'll get to, but in the main event where the whole NWO is attacking a WCW competitor, someone that was in the Dungeon of Doom. I mean, the Faces of Fear were.
I guess you can say, well, they're still not sure if he's with them because he kind of made it like he wasn't. So if you want to explain it away, but they should be interfering every fucking match. So I would have forgone. Yeah, I would have forgone having the WCW guys there. I wouldn't have. Or if you want to do it up until this match, then they realize they can interfere, so then they kick them all out. Right? You could have done that, where security comes and drags them out after Mongo interfered, because Bischoff's like, look, we can't have these guys get involved. They're all out of here. Like, they should have at least done that instead of having them continue.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it was worth it with what we got. And it just makes too many logic gaps on
why aren't they helping every match? So this sucked. I mean, I did like DiBiase at least bringing up his history with Wall Street. Like, that was okay. At least a little bit of history brought in. Jarrett's trying to pinball around and do some shit, but it's just like Wall Street is so slow. The crowd is checked out. The announcers are talking about anything but this match. You get, Mongo kind of dissing Deborah when she's trying to, be worried about Jarrett. We get another back leg front kick call from Bischoff in here as Patrick is just screwing with Jarrett the whole time. Bischoff, again, is weird throughout this. Like, he's trying to show off a little bit as an announcer by calling holds and his karate terms, but then he's being like kind of a slacker goof with the NWO. It's kind of like that really like the smart, cool kid who like almost downplays how smart he is because like he wants to act cool, is like how it comes across here. So I don't know, like that's odd. We get jokes about Kevin Green from Bischoff, so they're trying to keep him top of mind. And then the finish, like you talked about. Bischoff basically is the horseman of cooks here. I thought it was a dog shit match. It was boring and slow. I did like the finish. I did like the Deborah Jarrett stuff, so that helped. Wall Street is washed. He's fine as a foot soldier, but shouldn't be having these matches on pay-per-views. Like, I get, again, they had to fill out the cards. Stick him on Saturday night if you want to use him as a low-level dude.
Yeah, I just don't think he should have been in the NWO.
No, they could have found anyone else at that level to stick in there. They didn't need it to be him. I did like Nick Patrick in the match, so I want to start half.
I want to start out too. I mean, Big Dave gives us a dud. Keller gives it a quarter.
I wouldn't argue with that either.
It's rough. Dave also gave the previous match 0.5 stars, so he's really not liking the show at all. So rough start for him. Cats back at it again. And so the question on this was what body part best describes why you should be Miss NWO, and she says her feet. This was very weird. This was Sean Kidd running for the hills weird, where she's mentioning her
well, first of all, he calls Jeff Katz the babe hunter, which is something. Right. And yet we're in the senior division now. Like, none of this makes sense. I thought this was actually pretty, if you want to say cutting edge, I mean, the foot stuff wasn't a thing yet in 1997. So I guess ahead of her time, this chick here was.
Yeah, put her on OnlyFans now.
Yeah, it was ahead of her time.
And then another, this is one of the older, this is Isla, we learn later. But what material would you use to buff his biceps? And maybe talking about like Buff Bagwell. And she basically said, how would I explain this?
And then he just makes a hearing aid joke. The whole thing's a mess.
Your Wonder Ear or whatever, or Miracle Ear is not working or something. This was bad. This might be the worst. I mean, these are bad, but this one in of itself, I thought was the worst of the worst. So
yeah.
All right, our next match: American Males Explode. Scotty Riggs versus Buff Bagwell. When Scotty Riggs comes out, the voice says he's always been number 2, the American male loser.
That one made me laugh. That was pretty funny. The American male loser.
And so why don't you give your thoughts on this match first? Because I feel like I have a hot take on this one.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Bagwell's got his whole new look. He's got a collar on. He's got his vest. DiBiase hypes his charisma. We are in B team theme heaven here, by the way. Like, if you like that song, you've got 4 straight matches now. I did enjoy Patrick helping Bagwell disrobe as Bischoff talks up his massive arms, and he is huge now. He's already getting really big. Apparently, Buff is going on a Japanese excursion starting Monday, so he's sending little Buffy to camp to improve perhaps a little bit. But he's headed to Japan. This is where we get the cool overhead camera a lot in this match, and it's got kind of a sepia lens, which is cool. Like, we didn't mention that before either. It's not like the standard lens. It's got that kind of faded look to it, which I liked. I thought Riggs wasn't bad on offense. He's just a nice belly to belly. DiBiase says Buff has a new move he's going to use tonight. Buff slaps his old buddy around a lot. Bischoff is shitting on Piper, Savage, Flair. He says besides them, everyone else ran up to Connecticut. Yeah, they're to the glue factory. So he's really kind of going in on that too. Whoever's bailed out. Riggs, the disembodied voice calls Riggs a loser all through the match as he's getting worked over. Buff picks up Riggs' arm like a puppet and makes him do the American male dance, which is pretty funny. Throughout, Riggs makes a little comeback. It's an enziguri. Bischoff makes jokes about the Packers. Says the odds makers are way too overconfident on them. So I don't know if he's got a lot of money in the Pats or something, but he's tipping his hat on where he thinks the money is. Unless he's trying to pull an okie dokie, get people to bet the Pats so he can cash in on the Packer bet. But he's definitely calls out Vegas on that. And then we get Buff's big new move. It's a top rope neck breaker, and we get the overhead camera shot with it. So I didn't mind this. I thought the middle was long and sluggish and not a lot of heat. But I thought the impact offense that they mixed in between the rest holds was pretty good. The crowd is getting a little restless. I mean, they've seen a parade of jobbers for the most part at this point, besides Jericho and Chono. Bagwell gets a hard-fought win. I like the camera angle. I just went 2.5. I thought it was a perfectly fine match. To your point, this would have been fine in an opening hour Nitro, but this being your 4th match on the card, and we're still in hour 1 of Nitro territory is a little shaky.
I thought this was the worst WCW match we'd seen since the Hogan April debacle. I mean, maybe not mechanically, but just from a presentation.
Yeah.
Because
you didn't like the camera?
I like the camera, just that Buff is your new prospect, right, for the NWO. And Riggs, I understand it's two partners fighting each other, but there was no like struggle much on that. There was no fight. So it's one or the other. If you want to make Riggs look competitive, make it like a fight.
Right.
If you don't want Riggs to look competitive, which I probably would lean towards, have this guy squash him. This match goes like 13 minutes.
Yeah.
I'd have went like 4 or 5. Like Riggs tries the move, the American male move, their finisher. Bagwell counters, hits the blockbuster. That's it. WCW is interesting with this. Like, I think this is one of those like where WCW and WWE, WWF traditionally go apart from each other. And I was reading Simon's review of this match, and he brought it up, and I agree that like WCW always kind of has a sink or swim approach,
right,
with like these young up and comers where they're gonna give you time on pay-per-view, and it's what you make of it. Compared to WWE, which we'll get to even in this series, where again I want us to track the first year of Kurt Angle and especially look at the match times that he has even on pay-per-view, because he just doesn't work that many long matches in that first year up to SummerSlam 2000's main event. It's kind of incredible how short his matches are and how much they kind of protect him, don't get him out of his comfort zone. I mean, this felt really a lot for Bagwell that they said, hey, go out there. You're going to get 14 minutes. Like, show us what you got, kid, whatever. And I just didn't think there was much to it. The camel clutch I thought was awful. The PA announcer really started ramping up the loser throughout all this match, which I didn't think helped. And then the Bagwell sucks chant keeps ringing out from the crowd, and this is where I was annoyed at the commentator, because they kept saying, like, at one point Eric says, oh, well, they're showing their support for Bagwell, and that again was like, was he trying to cover for him? Was he being, this was part of the propaganda? I couldn't quite find the edge on that. Really, the bump Buff takes from the electric chair and the blockbuster that he hits at the end, which I thought was a good finish. And I thought Ted actually called it well, where he said that's his new move and then says it is the Buff blockbuster. He names it. Those to me were the two redeeming things of this match. But otherwise, I thought this was just very a mess. Like, I mean, we're an hour plus into this show, and I mean, even by your metrics, nothing's good. By my metrics, like, nothing's been good, and I thought this was terrible. The last match was pretty terrible. So the first half of this show is very rough.
Yeah.
And I just had a lot of issues with this. I thought this was very poor booking overall. So didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with it. The match itself, I thought was fine, but yes, everything you illustrated around it definitely is exacerbating the shit show.
1.25 from Dave, 2 stars from Keller. So is what it is. Deborah gives the thumbs down to Buff as he's leaving too, and he gets pyro when he walks out. And Eric mentions that he was an entertainer before becoming a wrestler, and he said he'll leave it at that. So
just a gigolo.
Yeah, Gigolo's preview there. Back to Jeff Katz. He has a funny joke. He says, as we know, Vince is the head of security, but he has a cheap hairpiece and a blue powder suit. So, would you dress up with Vince? And the woman says, I can't hear you.
The senior division not going well. Before that, too, the local biker chicks are dancing, and Bischoff and DiBiase are so horny about it. Like, they're all horned up. Bischoff's hyping the camera angles, groundbreaking. Like, it was so up and down. This might be one of the most volatile pay-per-views of all time. Maybe that's the way to put it. It's like the highs of the production and like I said, the credit to them for being so different and cutting edge.
Yeah.
But the lows of like the decisions inside of that with this Miss NWO, the parade of matches we've had so far, it is really like offsets all the cool ideas that they had.
Yeah, because it's even like, you hear the term like throw everything to the wall and see what sticks, but I feel like they had a vision for what they wanted. Bischoff had his vision for what he wanted the show to look like, and it did. By all accounts, like this is Bischoff's baby, this show. And it's just like, man, how do you get so much right and so much wrong? It's as a viewer for me, it was very frustrating.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is awful. So then Kat says, like, would you wear sexy lingerie or something? And she says, sure, why not? Then he to the next one, and this was my favorite. This would be my vote for Miss NWO Trish. Norton says he didn't get the Flash nickname for any reason. Would you help Flash with his flashing? Probably. And she said she would add to that problem. So she was actually the most natural in taking what Kat said and trying to say something, and she like presented for the camera. She smiled. She had like a little NWO sign. So easily to me the best of the bunch from a.
So do you think they really chose these women and had them fly in, or do you think they just found locals? Like
I think these were like, if you can make the show, come in, and
if not,
there we are. Local. Yeah, like you could be Miss NWO. I think most of them were just like local, and were going to the show or had applied and were local. That's the impression.
Or they just went to the local bar and said, like, "Do you want to be on TV?"
It's very weird because some of them are so awkward. You just don't know if it's like they're camera shy, but it doesn't seem like they're like necessarily diehard wrestling fans.
No, definitely not
either. So I don't know. It's a mess. Such a mess. Our next match is Diamond Dallas Page versus Scott Flash Norton. DDP gets
finally
the loser.
Yeah, but finally something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the last match had juice because it was a team breaking up, but yeah, this one felt like a pretty good bridge to we're getting to the business end of the card, right? Shoulder block by Norton. Page regroups on the outside. Some more back and forth. Page hits the black flapjack, calls for the cutter, but Norton hits a jawbreaker. Sting is shown in the rafters. You talk about like easy paydays for guys. Like this was literally 15 seconds for Sting. He's shown in the rafters, and then that's it. Nothing come out. I didn't even have memory. I think on the last show you asked if he showed up. I didn't remember.
Yeah, I know, me neither. Yeah.
And so he's very briefly here.
But we don't get Savage. That's a definite. We only
no Savage. We'll get to it. No Luger on the show. No Flair. So they're missing some of the big guys, but we get Sting for all of 15 seconds. Probably didn't need him either.
No.
Shoulder, and this is another dumb thing. You definitely don't need him because if you're going to show him here, then again, why? I mean, and I give him a little more of an out than the WCW wrestlers themselves. But again, like, why is he just lingering around while all this is going on and doesn't?
Well, if he's trying to tease that he's NWO, maybe, but like, why wouldn't Savage be with him then? Because he left with him. So if you're trying to tease, if Sting and Savage try to play mind games at their NWO, they should be here. And we're here because we're trying to make the NWO think we're working with them, right? So yeah, again, they're trying to go business as usual while not doing business as usual at the same time. It's right. It's an odd mix.
Yeah. So a nice shoulder breaker from Norton to Page. He gets sent into the guardrail. Some work outside from Flash. Page, in a very athletic feat for him, hops straight onto the top and hits a flying clothesline and then a float over DDT. The PA's yelling Diamond Dallas Page. And next out comes the finish, which is Buff. He says, "You're the next contestant for the NWO." So he basically brings out the whole NWO B squad. So we got Bubba, Vincent, Wall Street, and Buff all get in the ring. Dallas Page says he has no problem with these guys. I'm thick-headed. And then he starts talking about, like, Buff says, "I've cleared it with Scott Hall. We're offering you the shirt." Page says, you know what? I'm thick-headed. Scott and Nash are too. They got me. I got them. You always knew I was NWO anyway. Let's do it. So Page again puts on the NWO shirt. Ted on commentary. Finally, he's all excited. Norton's a little taken aback, but eventually says he's cool with it. Gives Page the big high five. Handshake to Scott Norton. Of course, Diamond Cutter slams him into the middle of the ring to a big pop. DDP decks everyone and again bells out through the crowd. He gets cheered on by Mongo as he passes him. And then Page in the crowd rips off the NWO shirt. So I went 2.5.
Norton wins by count
Norton
out.
wins by count out, which was nice.
That was funny.
Yeah. 2.5 for the match. I thought it was fine. As far as this angle, I don't know. Like it obviously didn't have as much juice to me as when he diamond cuttered Hall and Nash. Mm-hmm. This kind of felt like the sequel, the straight to video sequel. It still got a good reaction from the crowd, but I was a little weary in how it made the NWO look.
Right. Like, why are they falling for this
Buff.
again? Yeah. They're falling for it again. Like,
yeah.
So. It's stupid. Like, he didn't just change his mind. I mean, they're really pushing the angle that Page's ego was bruised, that he was asked 8th. Mm-hmm. So, and DiBiase says this is a stupid approach, right? Like, just join the team. Don't worry about when you were asked. So they're taking a pretty cool slant on it. It's not that he's loyal to WCW. It's that he's mad that they didn't ask him. He thought he should have. He's their buddies. He should have been asked out of the gate. They didn't ask him, so fuck it. Bischoff talks about meeting Norton as the doorman at Grandma B's, and talks about he's the most aggressive guy as a doorman. And people would go to the bar just to watch him in action. Then the finish is just all the shtick. Again, I'm with you. I think it's silly. I think they should have the B team just come out and swarm Page, and then Page just like fight them off and leave. Like, I think doing another fake out with the shirt was just like, all right. I'm hoping this is it. Like, we can move into Page doing something more that they just had to get past the show. And they
I think we do.
But, so this is time. I thought Page looks awesome. I'll say that. The crowd is super into him. The middle section's kind of whatever. The finish was picking up before the angle. But Page is clearly becoming like a top potential star for them. Like, you can see it building week to week. Like, he's getting over. His offense and in-ring ability is picking up. The diamond cutter is super over as a finish. All of this is coming along really, really well. I went 2.5. Would you argue at this point that the diamond cutter is more effective than the stunner as a finisher?
Yeah, I would say by this point, I think so. I think with the variations and
it wins. The stunner hasn't really been established yet as like a kill shot for Austin.
That's a neat one because I mean, really, those two moves stay pretty. Mm-hmm. I would say those two moves overall become like the two most over moves pretty much for the entirety of our run here.
I'd say Goldberg's spear probably gets there. The rock bottom gets there. Pedigree, I guess, probably in the mix. But I would say these two are like the keystone throughout the entire run for sure. I mean, I guess Sweet Chin Music for half, but these are the two that you'll grow to know and be like beloved. But right now, I'd say the diamond cutter's ahead of the stunner. We'll be curious when that turns. I'm guessing maybe after Mania when Austin really starts to take off. But right now, the stunner's not quite there yet. It's like a kick wham stunner, boom, wipe everyone out type move.
Mm-hmm. Back to Miss NWO. What's your favorite wrestling maneuver and show me how to apply it? The contestant says, I will, but there's children watching.
That was at least something, right? Again.
That was something. Masa Chono comes from a male-dominated society. What would you do to make his stay in America more comfy? Then she says anything he wants as long as I have some chopsticks. So
I don't know if she was thinking he'd use the chopsticks.
I don't know.
These are our most risque pair, I felt like.
Putting a live mic in front of these two was a move. God. So now our big tag team title match, the Steiner brothers versus the Outsiders. We finally hear the NWO theme when the Outsiders come out. Hadn't heard that yet in the first 5 matches. Hall and Scott Steiner start off. Nice fireman's carry takeover from Scott, and the the pump handle slam. Belly to belly also hit, and the crowd is like into this. Nash runs in, Rick hits a DDT on him. The outsiders take a powder on the outside. Steiners maintain control until Hall hits a nice choke slam. And this was a good point on commentary from DiBiase that was on the neck and back of Scott that he had the injury. So, they're kind of working on that. Nash gets tagged in and the outsiders take control. But Scott's able to get a foot up in the corner and gives Nash a nasty belly to belly. Rick bounces around with both outsiders, but catches a big boot and is on the outside. A big clothesline from Hall on the outside. This was they were going like they were going.
Yep.
And looking at the comments, and I agree. Like, we had Hall and Nash in the opening, but like for this show to be kind of something they created. Like, I think the fan prism still was like the NWO was their creation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And for them to really be in that opening and then here and then they come out at the very end, it's very light. And I agree with that. Like, this show, we'll see if it continues, but this show felt like the first time I thought like the focus was way too much on Bischoff. Like, this felt more like, the NWO was Bischoff's thing instead of anybody else's.
Do you think, though, that's because, he's just the voice of the show?
He's the voice of the show. Like, it's through his, like, he's your Kermit the Frog of this show. But it's a little rough because I think in some ways it's kind of a cop out too, because you can say like all the uncool stuff was Bischoff because he's a loser, so whatever. But yeah.
You could have just had the outsiders, pop in and out of commentary. They've been doing it on Nitro a ton, like have them work the opening early part of the show, and then maybe DiBiase comes out for the back end or something,
Right.
Or just do all four of them. Who gives a shit? Like we're mixing things up anyway, like. Or Hall does a match, then he leaves. Nash comes out and does a match, whatever.
Yeah. So Rick continues to get worked over. I thought this was good stuff by the outsiders. I've actually been impressed in ring with them. I thought their pay-per-view tag matches for the most part have delivered. Like I think there was the one in like World War III that maybe was a little weak, but otherwise I've been impressed. They give Rick a hot shot on the apron on the outside. Scott gets fed up and punches Hall on the outside. Rick hits a nut shot on Nash's desperation. Hot tag to Scott. Butterfly suplex, slide suplex. Nash goes to the outside. They put Hall up on the Doomsday device, but Nash comes back in and hits Rick, who bumps into Nick Patrick. That allows Hall to hit the outsider's edge, and he has the pin, but Nick Patrick's out of commission. He's getting crapped on by DiBiase and Bischoff, saying like him refereeing all these matches is taking a toll, and he's not doing his job. Nash gets sent into the post on the outside, basically gets knocked out, and then they hit the top rope bulldog onto Hall. That's also playing throughout. Top rope bulldog onto Hall from Rick in the ring, and Scott Steiner pins Scott Hall. And here comes Randy Anderson jumping the guardrail and making the count to seemingly give the Steiner brothers the win and the tag team championships. DiBiase and Bischoff on commentary are yelling that this is a miscarriage of justice, it won't stand, etc., etc. Overall, again, entertaining match to me. Some good throws, some good control work by the outsiders. Finish is what it is. I think as a viewer, you knew something this probably wasn't going to stand just based on how much they were hemming and hawing over it. But I thought as a match it was good, and it was nice to see a good match on the show. We'd waited a while. We waited an hour and a half, but for me, we arrived, and I went 3 stars here.
Yeah, I'm a little below you. I went 2 3/4, but still right around that. Bischoff says the Cedar Rapids chapter of the NWO is getting a Miss NWO, and there's a lot of responsibility for that role, which I kind of like that part of it. It's like it makes it seem like, all right, every town's gonna have a Miss NWO in it. Like at least that's adding some lore to the stupid contest that they're doing. This feels like the first real challenge for the champions since Sting and Luger back at Hog Wild. Like, Face of Fear, Hall and He have been, those matches were good, but like none of them really felt like legit threats to these belts until now. Scott was clearly back. Like we talked about, the clash was all okay, but here, like the double underhook, the belly to belly, like he's clearly feeling it. He's back in the groove. Um, Patrick doing the slow counts for Scott, the bickering all throughout. And what I thought was one of Bischoff's funniest lines of the night, he says, they're talking about Piper and the rambling on Nitro, and he goes, he was singing in a Gata Vida when he was getting dragged out on the stretcher, which I thought was pretty funny because if you go back and listen, like it kind of sounds like when he's getting dragged out. And then DiBiase says, "Yeah, all that Gaelic is just wishful thinking. He was just rambling." So they're trying to downplay that. The losers all throughout this match. I think Bischoff and DiBiase ponder if Rick is under the weather or is Scott physically ready because they're getting worked over quite a bit in the middle. The ref bump by Patrick was pretty funny. He really takes a crazy embellished bump on the razor's edge there, the outsider edge. And then the finish with Randy Anderson. It's pretty iconic WCW moment. The next night on Nitro, or 2 nights later on Nitro, is probably more iconic for what happens. But I thought this is like a pretty memorable NWO war moment during this time period of Anderson jumping the rail and giving the match to the Steiners. So I thought it was a fun power match. The offense was pretty good. I like the pacing, but the energy I thought was a little off at times. The finish was hot. And it could be a big moment for WCW. It could be an issue, though, as well, like you said, with DiBiase and Bischoff saying it was unfair how it went down. He's not a valid referee, et cetera, et cetera. So, like I said, 2 3/4, very, very good. But we're still kind of waiting for that big first great match.
Yeah. We're thankfully spared no Miss NWO segment here as they kind of reset, and then we go straight into our U.S. title match. Syxx versus Eddie Guerrero. Syxx has the B music. I know we think he's like the
it's weird. Yeah.
They call him the ultimate swinger when he comes out. So there you go. I think when most people think of this show, they think of this match for anything good. It's a match I had an interesting history with. Always kind of been disappointed with it until this watch, and I liked it a lot this time. This is probably the most I've liked this match, was watching it for this viewing. Nasty spin kick from Syxx to start. Really fast sequence resulting in a wild dive from Eddie to the outside right near Harley. Syxx suplexes Eddie to the outside. Ted mentions he wrestled 2 of Eddie's brothers. Syxx hits a top rope pescado. Syxx goes after the ladder. Some fan from the crowd, it's very audible, twice calls Syxx the F gay slur. It's very audible on the thing, so not great from one of Cedar Rapids' finest there. But Syxx slams the ladder into Eddie. Ted talks about how Scott Hall gave 6 pointers on how to wrestle this match as the loser.
I love that talking point. He says he sees a lot of Hall's ladder offense and the way Syxx is working the match. And, Hall has legendary ladder matches, and DiBiase was there for them. So he can, and so was, 1, 2, 3 Kid. So, I like that he's calling that out. Like, hey, he's learned from his buddy how to work this kind of match.
Yeah, I like that talking point, too. The only thing I'd say with that is it almost made me think, if they were going to do a ladder match in WCW, Hall should have been in it.
Yeah, probably.
That was the only thing. But yeah, so a good tug of war over the ladder. Eddie slams the ladder into Syxx's throat. Some more good ladder spots. Syxx has control. He climbs the ladder in the corner, but Eddie's able to drop kick the ladder onto Syxx. And DiBiase was hyping up that move. He's like, I know what he's going to do. He's going to ride the ladder down onto Guerrero. I've seen this before. A superplex from Eddie. Syxx hits a nasty standing kick when both of them were on top of the ladder. That looked really good. The crowd's behind Eddie. They're chanting for him. And then they both climb up, both grab the belt at the same time. It kind of falls to the mat. And then Eddie hits Syxx with the belt and then grabs the belt to win the match. So a really good match. I thought this fell just short of great for me. I ended up going 3 3/4. But again, I think this is a match, like I said, Meltzer gives it 4 stars. Let me see what the Torch said. 3 3/4. I mean, I've always kind of been in the camp that I think, of its time, this was more revolutionary, which I still get a little bit, but I actually think it's one of those things where, like, the last time I watched this match was when we did the greatest WCW match project, and watching just this match from this show cold hurt
I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say, is it's just something where it's a product of the whole show being kind of shaky and you're thankful to have a really good match.
Yep.
Versus, yes, if you were to watch it just in a funnel on its own, in a vacuum, is it going to hold up as well? So, yeah, I'm with you, I think, on that.
So that was what I thought elevated it. I mean, I do think like Six utilized his offense well with his kicks and whatnot, and Eddie took some nasty bumps. And I did like some of the psychology before. I thought like the slow climbing had been more egregious. Here, I thought like they did enough of the big bumps to put over that they'd taken enough damage to kind of get some of that out of the way. So very good match. I mean, Eddie Guerrero's 1997 year is one we need to track because he has kind of, I was thinking in my head, like, as I was watching this match, it's wild that he's such a, a big heel in 97 at the end with the chance he's getting right here. So he takes a wild, story arc in 97. And this is a good resume match for him. It's easily Six's best match to me, probably since he came in the company. So overall, very good match, 3 3/4.
The disembodied voice calls Eddie a Mexican jumping bean as he comes out. Like you said, we get the B team theme. DiBiase is very concerned about Nick Patrick's stamina. He's been going hard tonight, he says, which is funny. Bischoff had another great line here. Six hits a nasty chop, and Eric goes, "That even hurt Hector when he hit Eddie with it." So I thought that was pretty funny. Eddie's worried about Six's concussion because he says he's prone to them. He's had some himself as well, he says. So he's worried that Six could suffer another concussion. Bischoff, I thought this was interesting. He shits on Glacier and says he's a bogus martial artist and he hates fake black belts. And like this is the guy, he's put a lot of work into Glacier as a character and like a lot of time spent, and they've really built him up. So to have the voice of the company shit on him, even though it's like a heel thing, I thought was like a weird approach. Like I didn't think it was necessary to have Bischoff shit on that guy like that. If Bischoff was supposed to be an authority on martial arts and he's crapping on the guy you're presenting as a martial arts star, it didn't make sense. Like it just seemed unnecessary, I would have maybe had DiBiase do it, be like, "Oh, that Glacier, Six is better than him." Bischoff's be like, "Well, Glacier's okay, but he's 06, right?" Like do something like that versus Bischoff just shitting on him, unless they were just super disappointed in him. But it was an odd approach. Like you said, I love the DiBiase talking points on the ladder offense. The superplex was great looking. I thought that was really, really nice spot. The drop kick off the top looked really good too. Bischoff tells Six to do it for Alice in Chains. Did any clue what the fuck that meant?
No, I didn't understand that either. Whether like Six's hair or the fact that Jackal was the band, I didn't understand that either. I took note of that, but didn't get it.
I didn't realize Jackal was the band. That's been my band. I have discovered them lately on my Spotify. I didn't realize that was them. The house band.
I think that was them.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I don't.
Oh boy,
I don't get the joke on the Alice in Chains. Eddie slugs Six in the head and then wins, like you said. Very good. Six was great. Steered the match, I thought. Really mixed in some nice offense. He was precise. He was stiff. I thought they really used the ladder well as a weapon versus like just a springboard. So I like that. And that touches on the Hall stuff. I would assume he helped them put this match together, would be my thought, the way they talk about it, that he helped them figure things out. I liked Eddie winning. It was well done. It was a different finish you don't always get, where he just kind of falls down with the belt. And I thought it was well structured. So I also went 3 3/4. So again, maybe to your point, does it pop as well if it's as a standalone? I don't know, but as is was pretty good.
All right. It's time for the Miss NWO finals. So they're all lined up. He runs down the contestants, Jeff Katz.
Hang on, let me ask one thing quick.
Okay.
Do you think Bischoff confused Motley Crue
with Alice in Chains?
With Alice, because Nikki Six. Do you think like he meant to make like a Six joke and fucked up and said Alice in Chains?
Possible.
Just
that Axel.
Yeah, right. That's right. I don't know no Axel. That Axel. Axel Rowe. Axel Rose. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, good possibility there. So yeah, Caps runs down the contestant, says, "Cheer your backsides off when you see the one you want." They each, so basically he names them all. They
You get all the
kind of,
names?
I didn't get all
All
of
right, I
them.
have them all. Do you want me to read them off?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Did
will
you
say
get
this
the
too.
fun fact for each one or
No, I
the
did not.
hobbies? Okay, I got some of those.
Okay. The before this, though, when they rant, they say the Steiners, within hours, they're going to overturn the Steiners win, and that Six will have a new title because Eddie stole it. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Bischoff says he's going to talk to the executive committee, and it should only take about an hour. Yeah.
All right, here we go. So the graphics we get have fun facts. They also have their measurements on there.
Height measurements. Yeah.
You think they measured them, or they just
eye color?
You think they actually measure them in the back?
I don't know.
Jeff Katz. All right, here we go. Here are the names we got. And you interrupt me when you have the fun fact about anything. If you have my assigned. So we have Natalie Gent.
Hers was tapping kegs.
Okay, well, not bad. There you go. Lori Proctor.
Yeah, I don't think I had, because hers was, the first one was hobbies, and then the next one was like her favorite quote. So, or like a fun fact or something like that. And she said that men with bowling shirts turn her on. So that's her
thing.
I guess her word of advice.
All right, we got Rachel Trombley.
Yeah, treating hangovers.
Oh, good for Rachel. We have Dee Zierling.
Who got a good pop, training Rottweilers.
We have Connie Leeper.
Nothing for her.
Illa Christensen?
Yeah, that's the older, I would say the oldest of the bunch, and she doesn't even dance. I'm not, my dance moves are not exactly, I'm not cutting a rug on the floor, but some of these dance moves were atrocious, and Ela doesn't even attempt it.
Becky Payton.
Yes, Becky cooks bratwurst and French fries. That's her.
Becky sounds good.
Yes.
Then we have Trisha Resden with the fucked up graphic that says Mary.
It says Mary, and this is my favorite of the bunch. Trisha, so that would be my vote, was Trisha. Yes, but it says Mary.
Do you want to pull her picture up? You had the picture earlier. You took the picture.
No, it's okay.
We have Mary Coburn.
Yeah. It says men in leather get her motor running.
Oh, naturally.
Yeah.
And then we have the last one is Jody Marco.
Yeah, Jody. Her hobbies: bowling, okay, and playing the lottery.
Losing, most likely.
Yeah, I'm guessing she's not your Powerball winner. So
the oh man, when I worked at the market, we'd get people that would sit for hours at the desk. Hours playing scratch tickets. Give me another one. There was one guy I used to keep a tally of how much he spent just on a notepad to myself to entertain myself. It was like they were all in.
Now,
here's your girl, by the way. I'm gonna put her on screen. This is
Trish. There's Trish with her NWO sign.
Let me see if I can do this better.
Hang on.
So I'm not Tim. I'm not
there we go. So that's Trish. That gets my vote.
I'd give that to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she had the personality too. Now, when I worked at the gas station, it was the same way. And I will say, were you able to buy tickets, or was that like against?
No. Yeah. No. They didn't give a shit.
Okay. So what I would do is, if somebody would buy a string of scratch offs, because you have the odds on the back of them. It's usually like 1 in 5 tickets as a winner. If somebody would buy like a string of 10 of them, and they would scratch them off right there and wouldn't win, I'd always follow right in behind them.
Yeah, just go on the next
one. Not on the big one, because some of them were like $20 a piece, but on like the $2 and $5, oh yeah, always followed them. So I came out ahead on the Georgia lottery, working at the gas station as a college.
Man, it was crazy. Like one guy would sit for hours. He would just sit hours and hours, just boom, 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 one after the other.
The gas station I worked with, the owner's mom, she cooked the biscuits and then the lunch food, but in between that, she would do the cash 3 and the scratch offs just constantly, and also smoke like a pack a day. So that was all she did while she was cooking the biscuits. The biscuits were delicious, by the way.
A
But
little bit
yeah,
of ash in there.
oh yeah, a little bit of ash. It was all right. So her big thing, she'd always say like, if I can just get back to Biloxi. That was like her promised land. Like she wanted to win enough on one scratch off or on a one cash three that she could get back to Biloxi. I mean, she won $1,000 sometimes, but I mean, she poured in God only knows how much. Um, One other quick story while we're on the lottery stuff got me going because I loved watching it. It was a whole new world for me in college. Um, when they have the barcode on the back. If you
Yep.
take that barcode and hit it on your machine,
Yep.
the store has to pay that out from the
Right.
store.
Yeah.
So luckily I wasn't working the cashier, but somebody just handed the guy working next to me a ticket. He did that. It was a $5,000 winner. Our registers usually had like around $1,000
Right.
probably, like non a check or whatever. So he had to call the owner into the store, and the owner had to like basically, I don't know, it was a
Go to
very
the
like,
bank or go to the safe or
well, it
whatever.
was late. It was like on a late Saturday night, so it was like a Bada Bing Sopranos episode where he had to scrounge up this $5,000 and ended up giving the guy just this wad of cash. He came in the store and like dropped it down. Who knows where he got it from or what, but it was a little sketchy. But yeah, and then the guy got a stern talking to, like, make sure you check. I mean,
You didn't have to call the lottery. Like, what's the threshold there? I remember there's a
I
couple where they
think
actually
it
had to
was
call the
I think
lottery.
it was over either 5 or 10. It was
Yeah.
right at it.
You had to call it, and they actually had to come down
They
and
have to
verify or
they have
whatever.
to do it, yeah, because the store I worked for, it wasn't when I worked there, but a couple of years before I worked there, when there was still just the Georgia lottery, they had a jackpot winner
Right.
from that store. It was like 8 million or something like that, and then the store gets a small percentage of that, like 20,000 or something off of that.
It was interesting to me the ones that would like know they wouldn't even have to do the whole scratch ticket. There's a code, and they would like know by the code or whatever if it was even had a chance to win or something, like that 3-digit code at the bottom. Like
Oh,
some people like knew, or there was something where they would see where they didn't even scratch the whole thing. They'd just do a couple things, and they'd be like, "Yeah, not a winner, not a winner." I mean, I always checked every one just in case when they left, but
yeah, that's interesting
yeah,
because we had a lot of conspiracy theories with our regular customers because sometimes I think it was $300 was like if you bought like the pack, each when you put it into the scratch off machine,
yep,
it was $300 worth of tickets, and
right,
there was some people that would buy the whole packs, like
yeah,
give me a whole pack. Um, and there was always some like crazy, like they'd look at the back or look at the number or serial and like say, yeah, I want that one or not. But I didn't necessarily see any rhyme or reason to that. But that was a whole world. It was. I loved working at the gas station. I wish I could own a gas station now. It was the best.
Well, it's funny. I found out like a year ago, whatever. I guess when I was younger, my older sister told me that my dad was like in negotiations to buy. It wasn't a gas station; it was a convenience store down the street from us. I don't know why he didn't end up doing it, but I was thinking how my future could have been radically different. Like I just would have inherited running this convenience store, and that would have been my life.
Rhode Island was never like a full service gas state, right?
Back in the day, we had it. I don't think it was mandated, but like we had full service for a while, before until the
Okay.
'90s. In the '90s, for sure. There was no gas at this one that he was looking at buying was straight convenience store. But
Because
anyway,
down here it's all one or none. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it,
yeah.
they go together. You're not
Right.
gonna have one and not the
We
other.
don't have many. Most are like that was just a rare one that seemed to be. It was almost, I guess, more like a corner market than like a convenience store.
Okay.
I mean, but it was just like at the near like 2 streets over from us. So I guess he was looking at buying it, which I had no
Yeah,
idea of that story till my sister told me like years later.
that is funny because when the guy that I worked for sold his, it was about 2 years after I graduated college, and my dad like seriously looked into buying it too for me to like run it,
Yeah.
and it's always one of those like what ifs.
Me and
'Cause
Aaron can do it on the next
I
What
loved yeah, like I loved working there.
Yeah.
We had a monopoly though. Like now they've built a Dollar General like 2 miles from that gas station,
Mhm.
whereas before there was no grocery options 5
Right.
miles away. So our markup was insane. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. So yeah, that was funny. We can do a special Patreon only pod on our gas station.
Customer service.
Oh,
I at one point in
best.
college, I wanted to write a book about my time at Stop and Shop. Like I'd have to really think back now, but I had at least 20 chapters pegged out
Oh,
for
no.
like, and I only worked there for like a couple of years. I mean, I wasn't
Yep.
there that
I
long, but
worked
it
there
was
2 years,
yeah.
and
You have endless stories every
that
night.
it's so amazing because like now with work, like I'm thankful I'm working from home or whatever. But like, yeah, you think like when I worked at Goodies department store and clothing department store in the gas station, and then right out of college was the 2008, so there was no job, so I had to work at
Right.
Walmart for 4 or 5 months. Like that 3 year span, I have more stories and
Hmm.
like memories than easily the last like 5 years of my current job, as far
Oh
as
yeah,
like funny
no doubt.
stuff happening and whatnot.
Yeah, it was chaos because you got like only crazy people work there, or like just kids like us,
Yep.
or and then it's all crazy people coming in. Like
Yep.
it's
Yep.
um, yeah, it was quite a time for sure.
Great. All right, where are we? I think we're through. So, Kat says the choice belongs to the king
The
for the
King
Miss
Eric,
NWO.
King Eric.
Yeah. Eric says we only pick winners here in the NWO. He starts whispering some stuff into a couple of the ladies, like trying to make them laugh. It's taking way too long. Then he asks for the flowers and crown. He eventually announces Becky as the winner, makes out with her.
Yeah,
Didn't understand that.
she's the Miss
And
NWO Cedar Rapids
yeah,
chapter.
yeah.
She gets
So
flowers, a
gets
sash, a crown. Um, yeah, the
walks
makeout part's
around the
weird.
ringside and then sits on the throne, which is a toilet, a black toilet with NWO Souled Out on it. Um,
This is yeah, it's stupid. It
this
takes
took
forever. She looks lost. She's parading around. Like again, if you're Bischoff, at least pick the hottest girl. Like I don't get it. Why is he picking the ugly chick and then making out with her? He's a weird dude.
the other girls like congratulate her. This
Yeah,
is
the whole thing
bad.
is weird.
So bad. This may
Way too much
be
time. Way too much time.
we'll have to check. I mean, we talked about it when we did the adventure with the nuns, the
Right.
sisters, how that was drawn out. But like I think this just being every segment, like segment after segment, like this may be my least favorite thing of 1997 wrestling. We'll have to see.
It's up
This is
there.
bad. This is
It's bad.
bad. This is
Is this
WrestleCrap
worse
for
than
sure.
Billionaire Ted?
Because let me think. Because Billionaire Ted is hateful and not successful.
But they're
This
also just like 2 minutes on random TV at the end.
it
This is
is
like
more at the end where you could just cut it off.
this is a bulk of a big pay-per-view. Like this has to be at least 20 minutes all in, right?
I
Of the
think,
pay-per-view.
yeah, I think this is probably more unsuccessful just
Mm,
because of how successful the NWO stuff had been ahead of
right.
time. Like 1995, WWF is not exactly a great barometer of creativity. So, like, Billionaire Ted sucks, but it's kind of on the same wavelength as a lot of what you saw in the product at that time. Um, yeah, this was really bad. It's very disappointing. Are we ready for our main event? It's Hogan versus the Giant.
Yeah, we're finally here.
We're here. So I know Hogan debuts Voodoo Child. It's Super Brawl. I thought it'd been cool if he'd have done it here.
It's
They
crazy
do.
that he hasn't had it yet. I just
Yeah.
keep assuming, I guess, that they dubbed the NWO music over on the Peacock
Yeah.
stuff that we're watching. But yeah, I guess he didn't have it yet. I would have thought he had it by now. I don't know why I would have.
They do give him like a little bit of a different type of entrance with like the
Right.
pyro starting and
Yeah.
all that, but is what it is. He also comes out with 3 Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
Not in Louisiana for the big one. Nate Newton, George Teague, Ray Donaldson.
It's a pretty big star. I mean, Nate Newton was a big star, right? And Teague.
Yep. All right. Giant's wearing black wrist tape, which looks odd. He's never worn that before. I don't know what that was about.
Probably forgot his and had to use someone else's.
Usually don't wear any, so we'll have to see if he keeps
I
it.
know.
Hogan punches at the Giant to no avail to start. A chop from the Giant. Hogan bails to the outside with his bandana still on. Giant chases Hogan, catches him as he rolls in and pounds away. Hogan gives the Giant a big chop. Double clothesline from both looked good, I thought. Hogan walks into the boot of the Giant. Giant puts him into the turnbuckle. On the outside, both Vincent and Hogan try to slam Giant in the guardrail. He reverses that and sends both of them in. Shoulder blocks from Hogan inside have no avail. Hogan goes for the inside cradle, and that gets blocked with a big slam from the Giant. So the crowd's kind of iffy on this. I think they're just kind of burned out on the show. Yeah, we'll get to it. Like we start our finishing run where Hogan uses the powder on the outside. Giant fires back. Giant misses an elbow drop from the top. Hogan locks on a chin lock and Knobs kind of is in the crowd rallying for the Giant. Hogan gives the boot, slams the Giant, then hits the leg drop, and the Giant gets right up. I don't think you will ever see the leg drop from Hogan get more non-sold than this.
Does he hit it on Brock in 02?
I don't know, but this
not.
was immediate. I mean, this was like none the referees out, or I mean, this was he popped right up. It was amazing. He walks right into a choke slam. Giant pins him after the choke slam. Patrick does a slow count like 3 times in a row, refuses to count. Then we get our smash finish. Giant choke slams Nick Patrick. Eric says on commentary, you have to go save Hogan. Buff Bagwell runs in. Rough night for Buff.
Yeah, not strong night.
I mean, you know, again, if this is your young cornerstone, like up and comer, not looking like much of a prospect.
No, they're treating him like one of the foot soldiers.
Yeah. Eric gives Hogan an NWO guitar. Vincent gets chokeslam. Wall Street gets chokeslam. Bubba gets chokeslam. Slicks is clinched in it when Hogan comes up from behind, smashes the guitar on the Giant. He goes down. Now the NWO A team is out. Hogan, for some reason, like pulls Giant's trunks like all the way down. It gets blurred out on the network, but he basically pants him, and then they pull it back up. The crowd's chanting for Sting. Hogan spray paints NWO for life on Giant, breaks a wooden chair over him. They mug for the camera as the show goes off the air. So a really crappy finish here. Like this is a bad finish. Like I mentioned, I don't think the heat for the Giant was very good from the crowd. I think that's
or for Hogan. There's like no reaction when he drops the leg.
Yeah, I think it's just the crowd was over it and didn't really know how to react. But Miss NWO probably didn't help. As a match itself, like I'm not going to sit here and say I thought it was good, but I do think I'm very much higher on this match than most. A lot give negative stars, like Dave's negative 1.5, Scott Keith's negative 2, Keller's like a star and a quarter. I mean, I went 2 1/4. I actually thought, like, for what they did in the match itself, it worked pretty well. If you take away the crowd and everything else, like it's not going to be a technical masterpiece, but Hogan plays his role as like a slimy heel that's over his head. Is going to need the numbers game to beat this power guy. Giant, I thought his power stuff looked good. His elbow drop, he was bumping high off of that. It's just the finish sucks. They're kind of boxed in on how to book this. Because you can't have Giant win. I know Luger originally was supposed to be in the spot, supposedly. I'm kind of glad he's not.
No, it would have been a waste.
I think that's good that he's not. Yeah. But I do think they're kind of handcuffed in what they can do. So we get really a nitro finish on a pay-per-view. There's not much resolution. And then you got Piper still lingering. Again, this big NWO beatdown with nobody helping Giant.
At least fend off the guys. Like I said, like have security suddenly show up in the crowd. They're holding back the guys. But I mean, Maybe this one I can hand wave a bit, like I said, because Giant hasn't really pledged his allegiance to WCW yet, so they may be like, well, screw this guy. Why are we going to come down and get waxed for no reason, I guess. But they don't play it that way. Like, they don't say that. So
No.
It's silly. All through this early when they're coming out, Bischoff is bragging again about the cutting edge pyro and the music. They're clearly proud of like doing different things throughout this.
Yeah.
And it's typical what you would expect for this match. Like a big shot from Giant, Hogan bails. Bischoff's pumping up Hogan being a great person. He gets to see him up close. It almost felt like a shoot to everyone who thinks like Hogan's a piece of shit. He's like, I get to see what this guy does up close and personal. Almost brings up the charity. He's like, he's a great guy. He helps everyone out. And like, he really goes in heavy handed. Vincent tries to help. That doesn't work. It's a typical. We get a Bischoff cracking jokes about Knobs getting hurt in a street fight. So again, a second dig at the nasties here. No pop at all, like we said, to the leg drop. That was surprising. The no sell was crazy. And then the fuck finish, you get the chanting for Sting. And I thought we had one moment of this whole pay-per-view that summed this whole experiment up. And I think it also sums up where we're potentially headed with the man on top and how this could spiral out of control if not kept in check. And that was the credit we get at the end of the show says Eric Bischoff, a.k.a. King, executive producer. So, like, all right, like I get it's a gimmick and we're playing along, but are we starting to edge a little too much into egomaniacal Bischoff in reality, creeping into how he handles this promotion? So we'll see. Something to monitor as to when he starts to maybe get to be too much. Right now, he's kind of been okay. Is like he almost feels a bit like the lackey in power that they're using. When is, like you said, on this night, he felt like he's the guy running the show, not Hogan, Hall, or Nash for the first time. In the past, it's been DiBiase's money, Hogan's power, and the outsider's brain, with Bischoff being used for his power position in WCW. So we'll see how that goes. No Savage, not much for Sting, even though they're calling for him. They're clearly not ready for Hogan to lose. Giant's not the guy, right? We know Sting's the guy. But we have Giant, we got Piper, and we got Luger. Piper and Luger are hot. Giant's kind of hot. So we'll see how they handle all these things on the march to Sting. I thought it was a tough ending to a weird show. I like the creativity we talked about throughout the night, but I went 1.5 stars on the match. I just I found it kind of boring. I found it in line with their other stuff. I'm not going to count the Robin Hood match, really, obviously, but Hog Wild, we were kind of whatever on. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know, it wasn't great, but I thought it was fine. But I did notice that on the credit, we got no credit except for Bischoff, which like you said, we didn't need the plays in, but it's a little.
It's starting to feel like, is this going to become about him versus the stars?
Right.
We'll see. All right, let's get to our awards. We have to do our combo awards tonight as well. So match of the night, I think we're both in agreement with Guerrero and 6.
Yeah.
All right, for moment, I don't know. There wasn't a ton. I mean, the Steiners winning was cool, but I ended up going with DDP. I thought that was like the biggest pop was him clearing house and going out through the crowd. Mongo's cheering him on. He rips the shirt off. So that's was my pick.
Did they open in video package?
Yeah, that was good too. I ended up going DDP as my MVP too. I actually thought he came out of this night looking the strongest out of anyone. We didn't get the outsiders of commentary. They didn't have a great night. The Steiners again looked pretty good, but we know that's kind of going to be a fuck finish. I thought DDP looked the strongest and the biggest star. My honorable mentions would probably be Eddie and 6 for that match, but DDP I thought felt the biggest.
Yeah, I ended up just going with Eddie. That was my favorite match.
Yep,
so I picked him.
Shots fired. We had Bischoff joking about the 7-Eleven and the free tickets. Him saying that guys are running to Connecticut to avoid the NWO. I'm not going to count the nasties, I guess, the shots fired because that's not a WF shot, but he was shitting on the nasties multiple times. Glacier. Poor Glacier took a friendly fire. Dropped angle. I put Miss NWO because this is like a one and done. We never hear about it, I don't think. Like, we don't have the chapters in the different cities. I think they realized it was a bomb. No road report, no debuts besides, I guess, Jeff Katz. We can put him in there. All right, final grade. What do you got?
It's a very tough show to talk about. So before we give our final grade, let's go through kind of crowdsource at the time. Meltzer called it one of the worst pay-per-views ever up to that point, or maybe the worst. So, I don't know about that. Let me read Keller. This is Chris Savisa, who was a columnist for The Torch. he said the NWO held their first pay-per-view and it really lived up to their initials, not worth ordering. If you don't like that, how about no worthy outcome? This was not worth $25. It wasn't worth 1/10 of that amount. There's one genuinely good match, obviously the Guerrero versus Six Ladder match. The Steiners match was decent in spots and far too long and slowly placed to be called good, but on an otherwise good show, it would have been fine. On a horrid show like this, it just wasn't enough. Ditto for Jericho versus Chono, the opener. But then I think it's his interesting comments on this. So let me read this too. I've always believed Vince McMahon had more juvenile, bad taste moments than anyone in wrestling. Cross that out after this event. The so-called beauty contest set a new low in what is supposed to pass for comedy. It was not only tasteless, but pointless as well. And that band, what were they? Oh, and that band, what were they? The new Hitler Youth? Beyond bad. The crowd in Iowa seemed dead for most of the show. They probably had the right idea. Other than ref Randy Anderson, why were the WCW wrestlers in the audience? If they had turned the tables on the NWO and gang attacked Hogan at the end, that may have made sense if done well. Instead, they just sat there as dead as the rest of the crowd watching. If one night can take the hottest angle in American wrestling and crash and burn with it, this was the night. Put it on a show without Rey Mysterio, Demon Malenko, Chris Benoit, Psychosis, and Ultimo Dragon turned out to be the equivalent of trying to bake chocolate chip cookies without chocolate chips. The oversized toilet built for the Miss NWO disaster seems the right ultimate signal.
It's hard to disagree with any of that. The only thing I'll say I don't agree with is that it single-handedly killed the hottest angle. I mean, it's a one-night blip. It was been a flawless execution. Maybe in the moment you feel it, but looking back, I don't think it's.
Yeah, keep that in mind as I read the rest of these, because there's a lot of, I think there, I mean, we talked about it on some stuff like the Hogan main events, like even like versus Piper. They were like, oh, it wasn't very good, but it did its job. And I mean, I like the match. Here's Bruce Mitchell. The next time Eric Bischoff tongue kisses a housewife, I hope he has the decency to leave the rest of us out of it and to do it behind closed doors. Only someone on drugs would think that Eric Bischoff, not Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, or Hulk Hogan, is the real star of the NWO. This pay-per-view could have cemented WCW's momentum as the number one promotion in the country. Instead, Bischoff's bizarre soliloquy about Scott Steiner's injuries and his own kickboxing career were supposed to be the latest in NWO cool. Allison Chains my ass. Eric Bischoff is not cool. Neither is Jeff Katz.
So why does he mention Allison Chains?
I guess because he mentioned it on the pay-per-view. I don't know. Neither is Jeff Katz, who, despite being 18 years old, is apparently one of those people who was born looking middle-aged.
I say he didn't look 18. I would have never guessed that dude was 18.
Yeah. Nor is Mike Wall Street or Scott Flash Norton or El Grande or Bubba or Bagwell, and there was nothing wrong with that alleged band that a hell of beer bottles couldn't cure. The Des Moines crowd certainly didn't find any of these losers hip. The only slightly entertaining part of the evening was watching fans in NWO shirts rooting for the WCW side because the NWO guys were acting like such dorks. Not that the WCW side was any bargain. Bischoff's bizarre behavior wasn't enough to distract from a lot of mediocre wrestling and poor booking. Only Six and Eddie Guerrero's too short ladder match could be considered better than average, and Guerrero was thanked ahead of time for his efforts with a blatant racial slur. I guess that's the Mexican jumping bean thing. Where were Sting, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper? The finishes of the DDP, Norton, and Hogan Giant matches were blatant reruns of Nitro finishes. The finish of the Mexican death match between Morris and Bubba was so ludicrous that apparently the Mexican wanted no part of it. NWO Souled Out cried out for a major angle involving Sting or Piper, but Bischoff was too busy baiting Vince McMahon on the air to bother. And why did the first and hopefully last NWO pay-per-view have so little of the two guys who made this angle and turned the company number one, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash? It was their personas and wit that sold all those t-shirts, revived Hulk Hogan's career, and made Nitro the show to watch. Where were they, except for Hall's busted mouth and all, carrying Nash again to a 2-star match against the Steiners? The two were about as memorable as those yesterday's Team Cowboys that accompanied Hogan to the ring. If Vince McMahon and the WWF get back into the game and ECW regains its coolest cult status, Eric Bischoff can remember the night he insulted all of his customers and the performers in the company, trying to jam his contempt for them down their throats, and know that he and no one else is to blame. It's pretty scathing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things like weird, but some good points mixed in. That's kind of typical Bruce. But before last thing, let's go to the reader comments because I think the reader comments again are very wild. A lot gave this show a 0.0. There is Hunter Johnston that I put on my Twitter who may or may not be Delirious. I mean, that's Delirious, the wrestler's name.
Right.
So maybe. I mean, he was 17 at the time. He gave it a 0. He says this show consisted of 7 whys. Why do people think the NWO is cool? Why was in Wall Street on a pay-per-view? Why was there a Mexican death match without any Mexicans? Why did the NWO band make me want to go deaf? Why did Eric Bischoff practically make out with the homely Miss NWO? Why did Hogan pull down Giant's pants? Why did I pay $27.95 for this garbage? So there we go. And then the last 3 are all 0.0s. We had Paul Smith. The worst pay-per-view ever in the history of pro wrestling. It didn't make any sense. Eric Bischoff is so sickening. This NWO thing has to stop. Wow. They've got enough talent in WCW now that they could run a great organization without this NWO crap. Anybody who would ever order an NWO pay-per-view again has to have their head examined. Pathetic, terrible, it stunk. So that's a wild. I mean, that's a wild.
It's crazy
thing.
that there was. I know there was like aggravation with it, but I thought it was later when everyone felt like the young guys were getting held down and this and that. But
yeah. Sean Finnegan, the mystique is over. That was without a shadow of doubt the worst pay-per-view I've seen in a long time. The best part of the night was the ring announcer. That was the only real aspect I enjoyed. And then Mark Golden, my best friends and I get together for every pay-per-view, but this was the first one where I fell asleep while watching. That's not an exaggeration. I literally dozed off. And then this is where I vehemently disagree. Look, I love wrestling, but WCW sucks right now. WCW is at its worst, and WWF is at its best. Wow. I wonder if anyone in attendance feared for their lives with the anarchist rock band in the building. So, I mean, again, you see that at this point in time, there was still like WWF, and I know like Keller probably published these because it's the most scathing of the scathing. Right. And it's just so funny, like, in the onset of like All In and what, all this, like, it's like art imitates life. Like, it's so cyclical, like we're getting the same crap now, like, with the tribalism of AEW or WWE, whichever side. It's
I mean, as someone that was a pretty dyed in the wool WWF fan at this time, I mean, I liked this stuff. Like, I watched Nitro religiously. I taped it. I was in on it. I wanted my side to win, but like I didn't care. Like I was kind of in the middle ground on it. Like I'm like it was cool. Like I'm surprised that this early in people are already this out on it. Because it's not even overbearing the shows yet. Like we're covering these Nitros. They're not on all. Like I know we're gonna get there where the whole night is the freaking NWO half the time as we move along, but I'm pretty surprised by a lot of this.
Yeah, I'll read Chuck Morris's because he has a 4. He says, I can't believe Eric Bischoff called the Royal Rumble and best of a pay-per-view given what he put out a week later. I enjoyed it on a lot of different fronts, but it could have been a whole lot better. I guess this was this year's version of Uncensored. I thought the ladder match might save it for us. The lame ending was pretty bad. I did like seeing Guerrero leave with the belt and have all the WCW wrestlers heel and faces congratulate him. I'm not sorry I bought the show, but the NWO is getting stale quickly. So again, at the end, like getting tired of NWO, but overall, I thought that was more of like a balanced and And that flows into what I give. I mean, I'm giving the show a 4.5. I don't think this is one of the worst pay-per-views of all time just because it's so different. I can't do that. Like, I would take this over King of the Ring 95 right away, like as a show, probably over In Your House 4 or 2 of a show we watched on this show, on this pod.
Yeah.
So 4.5, but I can't call it like better than average either. Like it had one really good match and then a couple, like the tag title match, I was probably generous giving it 3. It's a low, kind of gentleman's 3 score on that. And then the rest is below average on match quality too. So it's one of those shows where it was cool to discuss and hash out, but you definitely see why they only did it once, like in this manner. And you also see why we'd kind of been talking about and leading up with the NWO, how everything in our mind had been like a grand slam. They constantly hit home runs. They constantly hit home runs. They constantly hit home runs. And this certainly was not. Like, this was the first time they've kind of fell on their face. And it's not necessarily Hall, Nash, or even I would put Hogan in that category on this show specifically. But it is the NWO as an entity, and they kind of lost a little bit of their mystique from this show with me.
I went 4.5 as well. Slightly below average, still an enjoyable enough watch. Like, if you take the Miss NWO shit out, like, it's fine. Like, to your point, yeah, I may not throw it out to fall asleep, but if you told me I had to watch it again right now, I'd be fine. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, no way. Would I want to take notes and think about it? No, but if I just want to put it on and watch it, like, I'm fine with it. I think I wanted to give them credit and points for being cutting edge, for being different, trying different things. So again, I wanted to balance that into the decisions. It just sucks because this could have really been an all-time classic given what they were churning out regularly with the unique concepts, but instead they were almost, like you said, boxed in. And it feels like this would have been better if they would have ran this like in the summer when NWO had more guys in the rank and file. Everything was humming along a little bit more. This almost feels a little too soon for what they had going on to be ready to branch out this quickly. But in their defense, maybe they didn't know, like they may have figured now or never, like, or they were just riding high. They're like, fuck it, let's just go for it. So, all right, let's get to our combo awards.
It's going to be an interesting one.
So, best show, I mean, based on our scoring, it's the Rumble.
The Rumble,
yeah, which is crazy because we weren't super hot on that show. Best match also comes from there. I'm going to say it's the Royal Rumble match.
Yeah, that one's pretty close for me. I have the Rumble match the same ranking as Eddie and 6.
I had it at 4, so that would bump it. Best moment, I think it's Austin winning the Rumble, I guess.
Yeah.
Nothing on here was great. And Austin for MVP.
Oh, I don't know. I might actually vote for that video package.
We're not putting the video package over Steve Austin. That's like a monumental win for him.
This is the best video package WCW does.
Did you remember it before you put the show on?
Yeah, we are in control.
You remember when you went to go put the show on?
We are in control. Sure.
Austin win that Rumble. Springboards to WrestleMania 13.
It gets retconned the next
but it's the best match. It sets up him and Brett.
Which they it didn't set it up because the next night they're still pushing him versus Bulldog.
Yeah, they get into him and Brett.
They didn't know that then. I'm just saying that's a good in retrospect, but I don't think is what it was. Like, to me, honestly, like, Austin winning the Rumble is not one like that Rumble itself. It's his performance. It's not that he won it.
Yeah, well, if he didn't win, I don't think it stands out as much. I think it's the most memorable moment of this month if you ask 99 out of 100 wrestling.
Yeah, but don't you think that's like history written by winners?
I would have told you in the moment that I was pretty pumped when Austin won because I was like a big time Stone Cold fan at that time.
You're a WWF guy.
No, but I watched both shows. I was in on both.
Yeah, but
Austin's the star of the night. Do you disagree with that?
No, that's fine.
All right. Better commentary?
Probably Rumble, I think.
Yeah, I would call it close because I didn't mind some of the jokes here, but DiBiase was out of pocket. What do we have for buy rate?
Buy rate's interesting. I mean, Rumble's not great. Let me see. I had that. We'll talk about the WCW buy rate. I think that's more interesting. It's a 0.47, around 170,000 buys, which is the lowest buy rate and buy number they've had since Slamboree 1996. It will be the lowest buy rate from a buy perspective. And again, when we talk about like estimated buys, I use Indeed Wrestling, which is Chris Harrington. WCW was a public. It's not, it's not an exact science, but he kind of calculates it and has in general what he thinks. According to him, this will be the lowest total number of viewers they'll have for a pay-per-view until Fall Brawl 1999.
Wow.
So a long stretch. This was not a success. This was not a financial success.
Yeah. No, it bombed.
Rumble didn't do great itself, but it's a 0.72 buy rate.
So it's better. All right.
So it's better, but I mean, if you compare the Rumble, I think it's better to compare Rumble to Starrcade.
Yeah.
And Starrcade was 0.95.
Yeah,
So
because the Rumble is
they're
their top
definitely
3
tracking.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Rumble's the top 3 show for WWF. Sold Out's a bottom tier. Yeah. That's equivalent to when it's time or whatever
and
in your house.
And then you compare Rumble. Let me just do a quick comparison of Rumble. So the Rumble's a 0.72. Next month, Super Brawl gets a 0.75. So WCW kind of ekes out, and that's probably Super Brawl at this point. Top 4 show, I'd say. Probably number
it's
4.
just a tough month. I mean, it's a tough. Everything about it was tough. Like the presentation was cool. Hogan Giant's not the most exciting main event in ring. They didn't buffer the rest of the show with anything great in ring. I guess they figured Eddie and Six may carry it. I think Jericho Chono probably underperforming hurt as well. They probably banked on that being pretty good. The Saturday night before the Super Bowl, they never run Saturday night pay-per-views, right? So that's already a climb to get people to watch on Saturday night. Then it's up against the Super Bowl. So like you're already kind of screwed. I'm going to throw this at you. Do you think they would have been better off, and we can wrap up in a second because we've gone pretty long on this one, but would they have been better off having the NWO buy the Clash and do an all NWO show on free TV that Tuesday night after Nitro, do the same thing, get rid of the fucking Miss NWO bullshit, have some matches and Hogan Giant on TV, and they take over the Clash, becomes the NWO Clash?
I think that could have worked. For sure, you're in a condensed time frame. Mm-hmm. The finish certainly of Hogan Giant leaves a better taste in your mouth on TV than pay-per-view.
Because if you look at a lot of the complaints in there, I can't believe I spent $30 on this. I can't believe I spent $30 on it. Right? Like, so maybe if this is on TV, it's not as shit on, right? Because I think a lot of people were felt burned. Right now we're conditioned to paying $8 a month or whatever. We get all these we get WrestleMania. But $30 for this show, I can see being aggravated. It's like, oh man, was that really worth the $30? I'd be mad right now if I paid $30 to watch it. So I would say, I think if it's for free, you take some of that sting away of it, like being a bomb on pay-per-view, where all the focus. Plus, you take it off the Saturday night before the Super Bowl, which I think had to have hurt this a bit. It had to have. Maybe. They never run shows on a Saturday night, and then you're up against the Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good. Different approach they could have taken that would have been more successful for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how the fallout goes. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll cover the 2 nights after this, not the night after. It's the Saturday, but the January 27th, 97.
Don't want to cover the Super Bowl
special
podcast.
I enjoy that one. Pat's getting whacked. We can cover the 127-97 Raw and Nitro. So that'll be interesting to see how they follow up on this. They get a pretty quick turnaround of Super Bowl, right? I think on the WCW side. So that comes up.
Yeah, 3 weeks, I think.
Yep. And we're almost up to already, like, we're a couple weeks away from Raw Thursday, from Final Four. So we got a lot going on here in our next few episodes for sure. So stay with us. Leave a comment, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow us across all of our platforms. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Smell the napalm. We are out.